Cool.
I
Okay.
like your little serpent you were fidgeting with.
Yeah, right. My bookmark. Hold on. Very
Oh, that's your
applicable to
bookmark.
this
Yeah, yeah,
to the chapter. It felt kind of weird having the serpent like as the bookmark as I was reading
yeah.
certain parts. So it's like my brain, you know. Um, but yeah, okay. So Wheel of Fortune card, the 10th Arcanum, right? Ninth. Hold on. Yeah, 10th.
Yeah.
I loved the beginning quotes and I loved how he went on to, or I mean, loved in like a, they were very daunting type or very like heavy kind of way. Um, and then I like how he actually explained that because I think the previous chapters he hasn't necessarily gone into the quotes as much, right?
A little bit here and there. I don't remember, but yeah. But yeah, he did it. I don't remember the quotes were though now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but he starts off as usual, like describing the imagery behind the card. Um, so the monkey, the dog, the sphinx going around the wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what the second page, like page 2, 3, 4, I thought it was interesting. He was like, is it man who is the um, ancestor of the monkey? He was just talking about like the realms of, being and how like is, I just thought that was so interesting. Like, it's not, I'm not taking it as fact, obviously, but like, I've never thought of that, of like humans being in, like the descent being like more like a monkey state.
Yeah, like descending into animal realms, kind of. Yeah. Yeah, monkey getting. Yeah. There's a lot in this book this chapter that's a bit like confusing to me, I think, and frustrating. I actually find it frustrating. So, um,
How so? Yeah, let's go over
but
big.
yeah, this whole like fall and rise, and then like the opening. I don't know. I'm not sure if I totally understand his cosmology or his system of thinking um about the fall, because maybe I'm not versed enough in Catholicism in this. And it's like this chapter is really heavy in that.
Yeah.
Um, at the same time, I really I like that he brings the Buddha into it a couple times, because this chapter really reminds me of a lot of Buddhist principles. A lot. Um, it's like the grinding of the wheel of samsara, that's like seems inescapable of just living and struggling. But there's like the Buddha promises, there's a way out, one of the noble truths. And that's like similar to what he's saying, like the way out into the Sphinx, like raise the spirits.
Mm.
So I like that. I feel that Buddhism that like actually just has a much more nuanced and better description of the process.
Mm.
I think it just to me it just feels better than the Catholic view. Like, and this whole like sin and fall thing of Catholicism that like um yeah, that just kind of rubs me. Whereas like in Buddhism, it's just kind of like we're just in it, like this world that's like has its ups and downs, and we fall into the animal realm of just like pure just instinct, and then we like want to pull ourselves back out, so we pull ourselves back up into like there's these realms of, but there's 6 realms in this, like in this idea, like this Tibetan Buddhist style,
Yeah.
bring ourselves back up to the human realm, and then like we get up, get ourselves up into the god, even the god realm, and then like, but then something, there's even that is impermanent. So like something tickles us that like rubs us the wrong way, and then we fall back down into the hell realm, you know, and then just start the cycle all over again. So it's like that's kind of the what's, and I like the imagery of like the wheel of fortune being the kind of the like these animals spinning the wheel, you know. Um, and maybe there is something to that, like six realms, because you have like the four animals that are in the Sphinx, and then the two animals that on the wheel. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then you'd think that the Sphinx represents the God realm, which is just another part of the wheel.
Which he's more saying is outside of it, right?
Yeah, it's the opening to get out.
Which
And plus this whole thing of the serpent being,
yeah.
and like his views of evolution are like
Yeah.
are skewed. Like he doesn't understand, and he doesn't understand ecology. You know, it's like he really betrays his ignorance in this chapter several times. Uh-oh. Sorry, hold on. The dog just keeps on.
Doggy. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think my impression of the parts, as far as I've been with it, yeah, I mean, basically mirroring what you said. I do think that some things, yeah, were a little bit, I think when things get too like philosophically dense, to me, it sometimes loses, yeah, the nuance of like the meaning behind it, maybe. So I felt like there was a lot of that, like a lot of explaining theory to where it just like, it almost like oversimplified it or something, but I don't know. Not oversimplified, but like brought it down to such a like reductionist point. But I mean, I really liked the bit on the like what, so the gnosis or the Gnostic text he brought in. I think it was page 239. I don't know if you have the book, but it was like 2 pages of the woman with and how birth and how bringing something from outside of I don't know that I agree with all of this, but I loved reading it like that. Like those are more, so it was about how like, so the serpent made, so it was about the 7th day of rest and how, but it wasn't, it was a rest because the serpent made the wheel to keep turning and keep having the days be, work or be pain. And then like woman choice was to like, she offered, so what, and this is page 239 at the end, second paragraph to last, and she offered herself for the rending of the close circle in herself in order to give birth to children issuing from the world beyond it, from the world where there is the Sabbath. So it's talking about how like the 7th day of rest was like what the garden was always like. And then the woman brought in, and then this wheel was made, and then woman was like, I'm gonna bring souls into here, but it was like this kind of like fucked arrangement or something, because then it was like the serpent was like biting the woman's heel and she was stomping on the snake's head, but it just kept.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how much I understand of that, like that whole idea.
Yeah. He did not pass through the bitterness of death, which for the living being on the side of the circle of the serpent is the way out of the close circle of the serpent, for he was taken up by the Father. So it was like the woman virgin who is the and then it's talking about Mary, who the woman virgin who is the soul of the counter movement to the serpent and of suffering since the beginning of the world of the serpent, received, conceived, and gave birth to the word of the Father.
Oh yeah.
I
So
thought it was,
yeah, he's talking about that's the just an analogy to Mary, then like Mary creating this pathway of hope to get out. Like
I
he,
liked the imagery, and it connected those kind of gender issues that and not in a good or bad way, because I think there was a lot of like heavy kind of words when it came to this. I mean, nothing that was like super whatever, but like just very appropriate for the time it was written, probably. And just like what was, going on. But I thought it did connect like the Eve story to the Mary story a little bit clearer in my mind, and was a little bit like beyond like it was a story that you won't find that in the Bible. You know what I mean? Because it was like a Gnostic text that was like part of the Bible at one point and then probably removed, or something. And it's a lot more imagery heavy and a lot more like symbolically like dense that would
yeah,
confuse a lot of people, which I mean, it's already like putting us for a tailspin, in some ways.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's such figurative imagery that you really have to, and there has to be some cultural context to it too. But it is interesting. It's like this whole idea. I mean, for me, I get this sense of like bridging this gap is bridged between this world of the serpent and the world of, and there's kind of a necessity of being in the world of the serpent somewhat in this, it seems like in this chapter, in order to recognize that the beauty of
Sabbath.
God, yeah, the beauty of Sabbath, yeah, of the rest, um, that we have to descend in order to fall, in order to rise,
Yeah.
some of that.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think that, I mean, even maybe since this was written, which I mean, it was only like the 80s or something, but
Six,
the 60s, I still think that there is a bit of, I think that there's been some hijack. This might be, I'm not trying to sound super, I've just heard some like new agey kind of theories about like how reincarnation has been kind of hijacked, or like souls on the planet, and what that kind of looks like, and
mhm,
how I mean, basically I've heard that like there are like a lot of souls being recycled, and like people going back into the system that don't necessarily need to be there, or people that like aren't coming from the Sabbath space, and just being kind of like blank or something. I don't know. Again, I don't like to think that about anybody, but um yeah, I've heard a few people say something kind of like that, which I think is very interesting.
that I don't quite understand.
So in this kind of reincarnation story, or story of, I mean, so I say reincarnation because it's like when you have like a child, you're pulling a soul from the Sabbath and bringing it to have an incarnate life, and then like potentially like returning back, and that like that cycle of it. I guess the steps that I skipped were the kind of space that's all held. That gets a little funky though,
Mm.
and then how those like are, I mean, yeah, and that presupposes that there's like choices that are made to get souls to where they are supposed to live their lives, or like plans for things.
So what's the issue? What's the
So I guess because so to be more energy vessels for whatever is like something got in like in the decision making process where they were able to like hijack the energy of this like soul transfer process. So I don't know this.
Like the serpent or something, like
I think maybe that's, yeah, I don't know. It was like either bug or serpent, or and then you get into like extraterrestrial like stuff where it'd be like,
oh,
yeah,
huh, so that's the interesting. Yeah, I mean that's like presupposing that's like a whole religion right there. They already have they have a whole cosmology of like how things work for reincarnation that I don't know. To me that a lot of that's kind of silly too. Like I don't know.
yeah,
Reincarnation is kind of silly to me. And that's some of the stuff in this book that I'm like I don't know. Like it's
yeah,
I'm so agnostic about it that it's like because I don't think anybody can really know. We make up these great stories and stuff, but and he like tries to say that this and this proves reincarnation, and it's like,
does he say that? I
not
didn't get to
really.
that part.
I think he actually says that in a previous chapter.
Hmm.
Um, but it's kind of like no, but like in this like his link between evolution and reincarnation, I find that really interesting that that's part of and the whole idea that it's not just I think he's struggling a little bit in this chapter to get some ideas across because it just really doesn't feel clear to me.
Hmm.
And maybe it's meant to not feel particularly clear because maybe that's the world of the serpent
Hmm.
that we're trying to like figure out and that bridge. And I think that is the thing. It is this bridge between this like muddled world and like the pure world, of the Sabbath.
Which I mean, again, even the pure, like in my brain, there's not like yeah, the heaven and hell space gets like, I wouldn't call that heaven or hell because I think heaven and hell is like on earth, that's like,
Yeah,
those are imageries for what you make of your life. Like, I think spaces outside of this realm would be what I would consider what he's calling Sabbath. And like that, I think has like the same, like as above, so below with that type of stuff. Like, I think there's like similar issues, but just very, very like they look very different.
right.
But I don't really know that. Like that's like playing the game of the gods, but the
Exactly.
actual gods. But yeah, it's like how do you that's like astral space, like
Yeah.
stuff, which gets very confusing very fast.
Yeah, but there is this bridging the gap thing. I think it's like that is interesting. Like somehow that there's like this bridge. There's a way of recognizing a way out of the toil of the wheel. Um, that's the important part of this book. And there's like several. I think like the Mary thing that he talks about is one of the ways that you kind of get there. But the unification of that part was really cool. The different animals on the Sphinx and how they unify. Did you maybe
I
even
don't think I got there. What yeah, go into that a little bit.
Oh man, if I my brain isn't working that well tonight.
Me either. So
Yeah,
we're trying to
I'm
sound
not
very.
totally sure if I can talk too much about that, but like unifying the eagle with the bull and the lion with the human or the angel.
Oh. Yeah, those are the cherubs of the elements, right?
Yeah. So like they also like represent the Sphinx powers, the different powers of the Sphinx. He talks. That's cool. He talks about like silence, um, to dare to be silent, to will, and to what are the what are the four
Those are the
powers?
three that I remember. I think those are.
Dare to will to be silent and to jeez. Anyway.
I know, great magicians. We are. Hold on. What's the? No, I was gonna say to will. So
dare to will to be silent.
Oh, here we go. To be silent.
That's the problem with reading all these books. I just don't have memory for this kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah, to dare, to will, to be silent. It's just those three. Because it's the eagle, the lion.
I thought it was four, because it's four animals.
Oh yeah, and man. And it's for, yeah, cherubs of the elements. To know.
To know. Yeah.
Will, to dare, to know, to be silent.
So yeah, I guess like the will is the bull, because it's like bullishness. To dare is the lion. Oh no, to be silent is actually the bull, because that's like to quiet the silent, to quiet the madness of the bull.
Yeah.
But it's like the operation is actually the things between the animals that he talks about. That's what's so like the will is something that is between the eagle and the bull or something like
Okay.
that. Oh,
That's cool. That'd be cool to map out and like put, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think you'll like that part, but yeah, like making the animal into the divine. So that's the bridging the gap is like we have, and this is an interesting thing that like I remember George asking several weeks ago for one of the chapters, like if I believed that that like to be more like an animal, like in a wild state is like the ideal, something along those lines. And I didn't know how to answer, but I think this chapter actually answers that question in a really interesting way, like a way of like blending the animal with the divine. And that's the thing, the world of the serpent, that's the thing that he like sets the world of the serpent off as a dichotomy, as like a separate thing. But I feel like it's necessary. It's like something that's like necessary in process or something like that. Like, and the serpent isn't, but then he makes like statements like the serpent isn't of God or something like that. And it's like, but how could the serpent not be? I don't know. That's where I get like really confused in this. Maybe I just am not steeped enough in Catholicism. I haven't read Genesis in a long time.
Yeah.
Like, or like, I'm not that well steeped in the symbology, but yeah, the serpent eating its own tail. The whole that idea of that kind of like terrified me reading. Like I hadn't really thought about that in a while, which I think I purposely haven't thought about. The whole idea of like the scientific rationalist idea that Nietzsche, like talked about, that that it's like a closed circle. So like all the energy is already in the universe that's going to be, and it's just going to be an infinite repeat of all the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
Because it's like, because it can't do anything else, because the energy can't be created or destroyed, so it'll just recycle like in the same, eventually it'll just make the same combinations. It's because it's like
Yeah.
it's like a closed infinity or something.
But that's the whole thing, is that like I think that I think like the atom bomb and like things that like you can like, I think we have like tampered with shit, to a point where, and I do think that energy, like it's always changing. So it's like the closed circle idea, like, I don't think it has to be like a non-evolutionary process or a non like, and he mentioned even like the spiral of it all, like it's not, but it's not, I don't know that it's not like a ascension descension argument. In my head, it's more of like a change, like, or a revolve. And yes, everything comes back to the beginning, but that's kind of like the beauty. That's where you have more insight and like more like rest and more like recovery because you've been through it all. Like, I think that's like, I think there's a different kind of peace there and maybe different possibilities of like creating new types of energy in those spaces, that you might
Yeah.
not be aware of before.
Yeah, that's kind of like the reincarnation thing. You live a life and then you kind of get released into the Sabbath or whatever it is we want to, and then like, and that's where it's like rest, you can rest and then you'd like dive back in, I
I
guess.
mean, I think even over like my brain goes more into like generational like stuff and like longer time frames of like,
Yeah.
periods of the earth that you go through of like, there's a lot of this and not a lot of that, and there's, different combinations of different things. Like, I don't think that those, like, I do think the universe is always expanding and the energy is being like drawn out in different ways, but it's just like, what's the flavor of that time that's going to be like what you need to learn then, or whatever, in order to like, and like but I do also think it could end very like easily. I think that there's been a few instances where some of our realities probably have ended. I mean, and I'm more of a subscriber of like multiple like dimension theories and like multiple earth theories, so like every choice that you could make in your life is like you have made in some other world, and that's the only difference in that world, and that gets complicated as well, and like a little bit like, okay, how are you aligned, and without going too far into like the details of my own, I guess, view of the world, like I more view it in terms of eons of that like reincarnative pattern, like,
Right.
I guess, but I guess it applies.
Everything, but that's, I mean, that's, you could say that's like, you can expand that to the big picture of like eons, but like it's reflected in a single lifetime. And even like in love with the world, even in every day, the everyday life and death, day and night, like everything we let go of as we walk through, we take a walk, everything, it's like a recycling. So it's the same. I don't know, there's still, in every moment, maybe there's a chance to grasp that resting, of
I
like
agree.
in between, and to decide to like let the decision be made of what's next, and what's the next thing to be reborn.
Yeah. My favorite part of my day now is like, or like my favorite spiritual part of my day is like going to sleep and being like, I put today to rest and I am born a new person. Like, I really loved that from the book, and just thinking of In Love with the World and thinking that way, as that really like helps to, take some of the weight off of all this shit, like I'm dying tonight and I'm being reborn tomorrow, like.
Yep. We go tomorrow. Yeah. And sleep is a great reset, because it's like it scrambles your brain in a cool ways. Gives your brain some new things to think about.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um, let me pull out some quotes, I guess. How did he end the chapter? I mean, that's,
yeah, the chapter ends. He's like, it actually ends on a note of kind of like, um, of kind of that in between place, like not fully committing to, um this idea of not fully committing to like the total abstract, like let's just lose ourselves in God, but not committing to the serpent either.
Hmm.
And the thing, not committing to science and not committing to like the priest. So like, um,
Okay.
but he's like, he actually like talks about the like real aspiration of the hermeticist at the end, and how that, I don't know, aspiring towards these ideals,
Hmm.
but still being in the world, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, what on the last page 265, the aspiration to personal certainty with respect to the totality of things that you in the industrious and fertile world that you do hope to attain only after centuries of the collective endeavor of generations of scientists. I mean, that was like Monsieur Professor.
Monsieur Professor, give me this arrogant and immodest aspiration. Aspiration of personal certainty with respect to the totality of things. Yeah. Yeah. It's like committing to this, like, yeah, to like understanding everything on some level.
And yeah, and that's where I agree with you. I think that some of this stuff is like, it's not for us to know really. Like you said, the like hijacking of the reincarnative wheel. It's like, is that anything that like, I mean, maybe, I more believe that like, yeah, in certain meditative states, like people that do this, like, and want to get there can probably get there in some regards, like, I don't think it's outside of the possibility of humans to get to personally. I think that you have to sacrifice so much of on this plane to even, and people that have glimpses of those type of things, like often don't come back in at all or in right ways, you know?
A
So
lot of the problem is that people have these glimpses of these things, and they put it into words, and it's like it's like it's no better than a delusion. If it's not a delusion, then it doesn't really operate in any way that's better than a delusion. Do you know what I mean? It's like, because there's so many, because so many people could contradict that in the same predicament. Like someone who like aspires to some spiritual thing, like has some vision of the reincarnative wheel and how it works, but it's like totally different than the next guy who does that, and a
yeah,
lot of it is based on the person's biases in life, so it's like, so that's where it's like it's like so easy to dismiss as a delusion. So of course some people believe it, and then like that's how you get cult leaders who like,
mhm.
people are like, whoa, that's quite a vision that you had. You really must be a powerful spiritual person. And they are a powerful spiritual person, but they're like, but it only serves their delusions,
Yeah.
or
I
it
mean,
serves like, they get like some glimpse of something, but it's like, to translate that something at all in a way that like, that really helps people is really, really
one,
rare.
to not be tempted to use that energy towards some sort of personal gain. Like that's what
Yeah.
you mean by like cult leader too. It's like if you do see something and you have like the general well-being of humanity in mind, then you wouldn't be like exploiting people or like that are under you, or like, even like using their energies in ways that you're not 1,000% sure about, or just like influencing people to do things that are outside their will. Like
Yeah.
that's where it's like it gets super super jacked up. But and I think, no, I do think knowing how to communicate any type of visionary work and only relating it to you and the life that you've seen and like what you want to do different in your life, changing that, and then going about your day. And if people
Yeah.
want to change themselves, that's the only way they're going to actually do it and have any type of foundational change go on, is if
Yeah,
they
yeah,
see your reflection and say, hey, I want to reflect that in myself as well. Then that's where it ripples out.
yeah.
But
Yeah, you don't have to have like some grand vision of things, like you don't have to, yeah.
you don't have to. I like to
And
often, but that's just my kind of space is to see
no,
things. But at the
it's
same time,
cool. It's cool and fun to do that. Like, it's like that's a cool thing, but like to actually make claims to
yeah,
the absolute reality from
yeah,
any of that stuff is like that's delusional. That's
yeah.
insane. It's like, and maybe that's too much of my Buddhist um training, like understanding, because like Chogyam Trungpa says all that stuff is just delusion. Like because in the Buddhist sense, it's like that's just workings of like the mind, and it might be workings of some space in the realms that you're tuning into, but that's still samsara. It's still like the realms of samsara. It's still the realm of the wheel. It's like
So
there's
what would
not
be outside
so like
of what would be
emptiness.
okay, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. It's like it's empty of any of that. Like it's not. It doesn't. No categories apply. Like language doesn't work anymore. It's like that's why the silencing of the mind is so important,
Hmm.
because like you have to be able to see those moments of no mind, of
Hmm.
just nothing. So like any glimpse of any kind of reality is still, it's like you're glimpsing the realms of samsara because you're glimpsing something that's
Yeah.
not empty. So like emptiness is
The goal or
the most emptiness is the most fundamental state of the universe.
hmm.
It's empty.
Hmm.
There's like it's emptiness, but for some reason there's some kind of like
Movement.
something that where something happens, movement happens, and we create, and like something is created. But but the Buddhist teachings are generally like you want to like empty, empty, empty. It's like and that's not really the goal isn't really emptiness to like find emptiness in yourself, but like to recognize it. Like
Hmm.
and my meditation practice has really taught me, like I really understand it. I think it's like that's pretty awesome because that is like peace, for me, like finding that place where like all that like working of like paranoia and like anxiety and like toil in the world and like thinking about like what needs to happen, or like any of the like spiritual like meaning behind the war in Ukraine and all that shit that like gets in my mind and all this shit. It's like just stop that, because that's like you're just going to spin yourself in circles. And what happens, and that's like the whole thing with like Putin is so wrapped up in that stuff himself,
Hmm.
and I can find that like as a world of compassion. It's like wrapped up in this worldview of like having to have this like domination, this Russian domination, and that's like this realm of like control and like meddling that's like to me like, and it's like chaos, it's war, it's like death, and like it is toil and it is suffering, it's like perpetuating suffering. And that's like, but that's what that mentality is that same mentality of like this spiritual, like I am this it's like I'm the spiritual warrior for Russia, Mother Russia, this delusion of like Russia. But from our point of view, that's delusional. I mean, it's like from our point of view, we don't see Mother Russia. There's no Mother Russia, like that's like it's a fabrication. It's a cultural
Yeah.
like icon. You can look at it historically. It's created that way. It's like, so then it's like this cult of personality and this cult of like control
Yeah.
that's like that feeds that, and that's what I feel is like the serpent somewhat is like that
Mhm.
feeding of that toil,
Well, and like you're
but
saying, like the loop that you get in when you
yeah,
know, and what byproducts cause that loop to be perpetuated. Like one person that wants to take over the world and give them a big enough army and it poses a threat, like, I mean, I don't really know that that's what's happening there. I'm just saying, like, in general, like that's there is like a slippery slope when you get to certain mindsets like that can
yeah,
cause, but at the end of the day, like wanting to, I mean, what's the equal and opposite like nice thing of that would be like wanting to be able to have a place to call your own or be able to keep your people safe that you have around you, or wanting to have an idea of culture that's very like present in yourself and your people is like a really beautiful thing that like
yeah,
can so like it's just getting in that, yeah, that loop. And maybe that's a better way to describe, instead of saying like a snake, because I think there's a lot of like yeah, at the end of the day a snake is a, a thing of God, like to me, it's like a thing on this manifest plane. Like, I don't know, I mean, like if on the other side of that there's emptiness, then like obviously it's something, so here it is,
yeah, yeah,
so but
yeah,
instead of saying it like that, maybe like the snake biting itself makes a loop, and you get in those loops, and I know I've been in those loops, and those are like, that's like the scariest place that you could possibly be for yourself and for others, and that gets you into really dangerous and horrible territories that spins you into void empty. That's like yucky, I mean, not void yuck empty, but you know what I'm trying to say, like the emptiness that doesn't have anything, and that, I mean,
yeah,
there's beauty in that. There's also like terror when you see no, like the Nietzsche, no way out of the same pattern over and over, and I mean,
yeah,
it either inspires
yeah,
terror, it inspires pride, with like Russia, or like inspires continual like that, war, like that's
yeah,
interesting,
yeah,
seeing it as a
yeah.
loop.
I mean, it's like energy patterns that just get caught up. I mean, you can see like you could categorize them. Like I like the idea, like William S. Burroughs' idea of like control. Control as like a noun. A thing. Yeah, it's this whole, yeah, like control is like it's like a archon, or what's the word archon, or not an archon, what's the
Well, yeah, the
word?
spiritual like bugs that get on you.
Yeah, well, like control could be considered like a God, what is the word for that?
Archetype.
No, um Connor Habib talks about it a lot. The it's like a spirit, it's like a spiritual entity that's created. It's like
Yeah,
a demon that's like, it's like the idea of the demon that's created in the algorithms
I
of
think that's
Facebook,
archon,
Archon.
I think. But
um,
it's like a egregore, but
yeah,
not like a, but it's not quite an egregore. It's more like a yucky like thing that latches on to you,
yeah, yeah,
that can like just thwart some like karmic progress that you're making or something, or like
yeah,
sucks something.
yeah, but it's still just I think he talks about it's like the devil is an ape of God. It's still just an ape. It's still just trying to do the same thing of just like of
Oh,
the clarity of,
yeah.
I don't know. There's
Why that made me feel funny.
the
Oh.
devil is an ape. Yeah, or like the previous chapter where he talks about Faust and how Mephistopheles doesn't really have any power at all. Like
Hmm.
he's just, all he's doing is showing Faust his like foibles or something.
Hmm.
Forget exactly.
Hmm.
Where like, and I like that in this book, he's like doesn't give any power to the devil, and and to that fear, to that world, because that's just like, there's compassion in that too, because like you can see people getting caught up in it, and you see yourself getting caught up in stuff that's similar, and you just know that like it'll work its way out eventually. And you can know, and that's what I like about the fundamental field of emptiness in Buddhism, is like, and that's where I feel like things can calm down, and you can have a nice cult, you can retain your culture and your um and you can defend it even from invasion, like you're strong, um but you don't feel the need to control others, you don't feel the need to, and that's a really tight rope to walk.
Mm.
It's a really really tricky place to walk in that.
Yeah, but
And
again,
that's like some kind of Edenic state, and that's what I feel like is like what he's talking about in this, is like you're still existing and you still have your culture and your, but you exist with like open to that state of connection with divinity, or in the Buddhist sense, connection with the emptiness, like the knowing and understanding the like fundamental emptiness behind it all, and being okay with that.
and that's like the return to Sabbath, like returning your
Yeah,
mind to like empty so that you can create something new from that space. Like, because I also think the possibility to clear yourself makes the possibility to bring anything out of that, and like create something too.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I wish he would have explained it more, like, or said, like, because I think that's the same, that's like what I feel like the Sabbath holds, like that's the space it holds for him. Maybe. I don't know that, but
that might be in the next chapter though.
okay.
Force
Interesting.
with strength,
Okay.
which talks about like, I think it gets into the will.
Okay. Does he go into each animal and the
I don't know, but that's like, he talks about the lion is like, the lion is on the strength card on pretty
yeah.
much every deck. There's a lion. There's like the lion and the maiden. Anyway, she's like taming the lion.
Oh yeah.
It's like,
Okay. I'm
it's
looking
like
at it now.
energy directed.
Interesting. Good.
But anyway, yeah.
Uh
Yeah, it's a really interesting chapter. I found it really challenging, and I think like talking about it right now is helping
yeah.
with some sense.
Same.
What was your take on the wheel before? I like this question. I think George asked it before you read this chapter.
Yeah. I mean, karma more so, like less in ways that he got into, but more in ways of like how things progress in your own life based on like certain things. And maybe that's just because that's more of the space that I'm occupied, or the thing that's like I occupy my understanding of that. I mean, and not so much in a way where every action has a consequence or something, or like, oh, that's your karma. More like there is like physical like things in your field that are good and bad that like cause things to happen. And it's more of like a filtration system of the things that come into you and the things that come out to you, which also relates to my practice, or based on like what I think of like angelic energy, and or any type of an energy like that, as well as my working with like elemental space, is like to create that filter and like know what comes in and out in those ways, and what I'm focusing on and what time. Like all of that is because of like the wheel of karma moving around you and things and events and time and space. um which I don't know that this chapter necessary. I mean, I don't know that that's really changed in my mind after this chapter, but he more talks about it as like bigger picture than that, I think, and a little bit more like the destiny of mankind, which I think maybe, I mean, maybe that's a trend that he's very like, I don't ever take it that far. I mean, I really don't think about like I mean, I'm dressed very post-apocalyptic, but I don't really think about the end or the beginning of like, I'm more about like what my practice is all about, like what's going on in the individual's lives, you know? And like my life, or like the things that are the lives around me that you have like immediate interaction over. Like, I think this is a really cool perspective of something like that, you know, in a bigger way. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that, I mean, yeah, that's, I guess, how I saw the wheel a little bit more. Like, it would have been just like more of a karmic card and like watch
Yeah,
the
just
circle.
yeah, maybe like a warning to tell, like to get you to look at what's going on, like karmically, what just pay attention to your influences and your output, that filter, that kind of thing.
And like the churning of it all, like,
Yeah.
you know, and you're looking for some outcome here, you know, like you want your hard work to pay into some, you know, into some fruitful thing for you, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I wouldn't take it as a good or a bad omen necessarily, but just that like that's being worked through at that time, you know, like there is
Yeah.
something going on.
Yeah. I would almost think now that I read this, it's like I'm more affirmed in this Buddhist idea, like that we have the wheel, but there's like the way out of it is just seeing beyond the wheel, you know. I think I want to say that the no, there's a what is that card on the in the Crowley deck that's like the wheel, but it's not the Wheel of Fortune card, it's a different card, like one of the things.
I could
Yeah.
get the little pamphlet
But
out.
it's like a wheel with like clouds behind it. So there's like this idea of that there is like you're in the wheel, you're churning, but like get some perspective, like
Mhm.
step back from the wheel and see it, you know. That's what I kind of like, that there is a way out, that you don't have to be just churning on the wheel, like thinking, trying to think your way. And he even talks about that in the book, like intellectualizing, like thinking your way. And that's what the serpent does, is that's our brain, you know, intellectualizing, and we like churn in this world that we're like so caught up in this like, or this version of the world that we're caught up in.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's like causing us all this suffering, like bringing us down and toiling. But there's a way to like step back, and that's what I feel like. The wheel is this card actually now is making me think, like just reminder of the Dharma, you know, of like Buddhist Dharma.
I like that. And definitely that's very applicable right now. I mean, for me, you know,
Yeah,
and to just a good reminder always to like step outside the wheel, you know,
yeah,
take a bigger look at like what of just like life and just like go on a freaking hike or something, you know, like like remove your be in like meditation, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
remove yourself from like, yeah, things that'll
yeah,
have you keep churning.
yeah. And like, and be aware of what is churning too, just to know that like how important is it really, you know, really ask yourself that.
Yeah.
And like what is it doing to cause you suffering or not, you know, are you gonna like, is this actually helping? Yeah, what's interesting, yeah, like there's the field, but then like he goes into that, like what we're talking about with the Sphinx, which is like this whole complex operation of like alchemical operation of like blending the animals into one thing, like animal and nature into. But that is what kind of reminds me of like, it's actually not, he like he's intellectualizing it, but it's not that much more complicated than like going out in nature, you
Hmm.
know, sometimes where you
I
just
think
like
it's,
can be.
yeah, the magic way. I mean, because that'd be like the next things to get into, you know, it's like elemental planetary energy, you know, constellation energy. Like you get into those, like it's big, it's like more bigger, it's big, more complex, but at the same time, it goes back to the same place because I think the constellations get into like more like cherub energy, right? And then like
Mhm.
you're working with the cherubs of the, so it's like it's general on both ends. You know what I'm trying to say?
Uh-huh.
like you have the element, but then you have the like cherub that like represents that element too, that all
Right.
things are under, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's the emanation, right? It's the prismatic emanation from the one,
Ooh.
the one light source.
The one what?
That's the idea. The one light source, which is God or whatever.
Oh,
Yeah. That's Platon. It's like Neoplatonic, Platonic ideal stuff.
okay, cool.
Yeah. That's what a lot of that stuff comes from. So
Makes sense.
yeah. Um.
Cool.
Oh
Should
yeah. He even says like he quotes. He says like Plato at the end.
oh he does?
Yeah. He's like Plato had it wrong and some such thing. Plato committed an error, moreover quite understandable, of peopling the higher sphere of the spiritual with ideas, although no world of ideas as a separate world or sphere exists. The whole world is peopled only by individual beings, and ideas live and exist only in them, through them, and in relationships with them. Ideas are certainly real, but but as an immanent reality, not as a separate reality.
Hmm.
Ideas live only in a given consciousness, be it that of God or of the angelic hierarchies or of man.
Hmm.
So like he's just saying that like Plato had this idea of like just like pure ideas, but ideas can't exist without beings thinking the ideas. So
Yeah.
that's what he's saying. And that's good. That's like pretty later, like more nuanced, but it's like it is similar to the Neoplatonic stuff anyway, because there's still this idea of hierarchies of beings. And a
Yeah.
lot of people could say that all of it is just the emanation from God, you know, you know. So
Yeah.
like the one thing is, and it's like a prism. So like the hierarchies, so the angels, the seraphim, the cherubim, they're all just like um beings that exist in some as some like closer to God, and then
Mhm.
like further out to like create the world, you know, to create this.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But
Maybe.
that's, I mean, that's like, that's, what's his name? Philo? No, I think maybe it was Philo of Alexandria that was really first talked about that. But he was or was it Plotinus? But one of the early like Neoplatonists um was, he was pagan, and he thought he came up with all the ways that all the like the original Greek gods fit in this hierarchy. And then like later Christians took the same idea and like placed the angels as the hierarchy, I think.
Oh,
So like yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's just a Greek god adaptation.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's just the same idea. It's the same idea of like God's emanatory powers creating these beings that like radiate outward and down into to create the world. And so like you just place these different gods at on the levels of emanation,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
That's the idea.
Cool.
Plato's original idea was just that like there's the ideal, there's the forms like that are like blueprints or something. They're like this ideal form that we can't, that the mortal person can't really comprehend, and only through like rigorous philosophy could we possibly, if that, and maybe not if that. um so he didn't really talk about like gods and such as that emanation, but
Hmm.
more as like these ideas. And then like and then I guess you could categorize like sub ideas and then sub ideas, and then like then they lay themselves onto matter or something, like
Okay.
some kind of thing like that. There's lots of different ways people have interpreted that,
Well,
but
and see, that's I've
it's
like more
not
been
really
about
stuff.
frequencies, like frequencies that tune matter into being a certain way, you know,
Yeah,
which is interesting to think of it more as like ideas that like inspire people to be a certain way, you know,
yeah,
or things to be a certain way, because I guess that's more in like matter sense. Interesting.
yeah. I mean, a lot of people, like, of course, thought like mathematics is like the way we get to that ideal form, because math can't be argued with. You know, proofs in math are proof, like it's truth, like, and they're like math is the blueprint for all that kind of thing. Math
I
is
would agree with that.
yeah,
But in terms of frequency and, you know, which is what, sound and light, you know, like
yeah,
what, let there be light, like there was first a sound and then there was the light, you know.
yeah.
Like that's
But
kind of,
math is still just a descriptive of what it is. It's just a very
yeah.
accurate and it doesn't really pertain to the lived experience. It only pertains to like the quantitative experience. You know, it can't really explain the subjective realities.
Or what it's like to experience that equation.
Yeah,
Because I mean, you can, yeah, I mean, that's the same thing though. Like you can map out how you throw, you know, how you get hit by a rock, but unless
yeah,
you get hit by a rock, you know, you're not going to really like feel that like, oh, I just equated it out.
yeah. I was always so frustrated with this idea that like Sherlock Holmes was a great boxer, you know, because he was like so he could calculate everybody's moves so fast, you know, like he
Really?
had like, yeah, it was like this idea of like the perfect intellect, like calculating the
Oh
moves, like how
God.
a person was going to move. And it's like any fighter would just say that's like that's not it. You know, it's pure instinct. Like you just learn, like you're in the moment, you get in the flow, you're not calculating anything. Like
Well, my
of
high
course
school
you could
teacher,
calculate, like someone outside could calculate all the vectors and all the things going on in the fight, but
my high school physics teacher used to live in the mountains and he hit a deer on the way home one day and it was like big, so we knew it was a deer, but he looked behind him and didn't see anything. He saw his tire, like his like rims flapping in, you know, the air or whatever, and was like, stops the car, gets out, he's like, this deer's gone, you know, goes home, does the whole math equation for if I hit something at this angle of its body and it was about this much weight, what would be the trajectory of where it would land? And calculated it based on where he was. And I guess he was within like a foot of margin of error. And it was on the side of the road. It was a baby deer. And then his wife and him brought it back and they like cooked it up and ate it because it was like a deer
that's
that was like
impressive.
baby. But yeah, isn't that impressive? Like,
But like the fact that he would remember, well, he must have like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like he knew kind of how fast he was going. He saw where the deer hit, like on the car. Yeah, that's that's kind of
like if
cool.
it either
He
hit,
he guessed the weight of the deer, probably the size.
he's like, it
Pretty
either
good
smacked
guess
its
on it.
head or it hit its shoulder. And if it hit its head, it's here. If it hit its shoulder, it's here. And it was like, oh, it hit its shoulder because it's here.
Yeah. See, that's what math is really good at, is like calculating these things for like future planning, you know,
Oh, yeah.
and calculating how things can work, how things we might make things work in certain
How you
ways.
move through time. That's why it's very unlikely Sherlock Holmes like mapped it out in the 1 second that was happening. But if you
But you
have
can't,
a longer time to like, oh, I can go home and do a bunch of math problems and come back and see if the deer's there, like that, you know, it's a little
yeah,
bit more realistic and fruitful, you know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a different
Guy.
thing. It's not a lived subjective experience in the moment.
Hmm. Um, yeah, I could read a quote to relate it back to the book. Oh, wait, I have a question mark by this. Oh, I liked it, but I don't think I understood it all the way. It's page 243 in the third paragraph, talking about miracles. A miracle takes place when the energy of the world undergoes either an increase or a diminution. This presupposes an opening in the circle of the world.
Well,
So an increase or an diminishing aspect of energy, right, is a miracle.
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where he's getting that from, but he posits that as a way that that like his system can work, you know,
Yeah.
that that it's not just a closed loop, that there's something, that there can be things going in and coming out, of the loop.
Yeah.
Which I think actually modern science backs that up now. I even looked it up, and I looked up that issue, that particular philosophical issue, and scientists, like, they still argue about it a little bit, but they're kind of like, yeah, it's very unlikely that that's the case.
That it's that it's
That it's
energy
that
cannot be
close.
created or destroyed,
Well, energy can't be created or destroyed,
but transfer of it.
but I guess there's some kind of proof that maybe, like, it can't, that it also will just be infinite, create different creations, that it won't loop back and create the same stuff again,
Yeah.
which yeah.
I
But
agree.
I guess maybe there is energy. I mean, we don't know that there could be energy inserted into the. Maybe there can be energy created.
I mean, the only times I felt that would be in like psychedelic things, like honestly, where it's like, where did this come from? Like, or things that have saved my life in ways that like I wouldn't have been able to do on my own. But I mean, again, maybe it's like if you can think it, then it'll happen, or you know what I mean? It exists in your field. But I mean, I do think there are some things that like you need a little bit of like outside energy from. You could get addicted to some of those, very easily, but
Mhm. I don't know.
maybe that's being a little too
That's
cryptic.
Yeah, but he's positing that is what a miracle is, and that's where, like, the energy is inserted, and that's how, like, you can have a not closed loop. But that's just his philosophical idea.
It seems like it's just his. I put a big question mark next to it and I was trying to
Uh,
skim around it. And yeah, it seems like that's more of like what he, which I thought that's pretty profound.
yeah, yeah, and like, this relates to the spiral, which I really like that too, is that it's not a just one closed circle ever, that it can't actually be, that it is a spiral.
Mhm. I agree with that too.
And the like, nature and the cooperation of nature. I like how he got into that over the competition in nature.
Yeah.
Like, that's more in line with the
Nature with two faces. Nature's benign and cruel and at one and the same and the same time.
yeah.
At one and the same time. Oh yeah, benign and cruel. Okay, because those are opposites. Yeah. Nature, the loving mother and the cruel stepmother. I was just like, whoa.
Yeah. And you can get caught up in kind of one or the other. But he does kind of have this, like, dualistic viewpoint. He sets things up as opposites, but then sometimes he breaks down those opposites, which is really interesting, because he doesn't like dualistic thinking himself. Like, but he does get caught up in it a little bit.
I think you're right with him being conflicted in this chapter, you know?
Yeah. But maybe that's the nature of the wheel. Again, it's like maybe that's just like, because it is this, I don't know, up and down. It's like in the wheel or out of the wheel. It's hard. It's like hard to place what's actually
Orient
there.
yourself.
Yeah. Orient yourself on the wheel.
Yeah. All right. I think I need to tap out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to stop the recording. Bye, everyone that's not here. Hope to see you soon.